We are back again. Oh, I'm so excited. Hold on, I'm sitting on a pillow, so let me get myself together. I'll wait for some people to come in. Hi, Hi, Quincy. Hi, Austin. Okay, Quincy, I'm just gonna tell them. Thank you, Austin. I'm just gonna tell them, give them a little background on Watered Down, then I'll let you join. Okay. So hi everybody. Welcome back to Watered Down episode 3. I'm so excited. Today's talk, I wanted to share a little bit about research that I did over the summer. I kind of went, hey y'all, I went to Seattle, a lot of you may know, and I didn't really get to tell you guys what I was doing, everything in that sort. So I'm maybe I should tell them a little bit about the research that I did over the summer with the Trust for Public Land. And I thought, what better way to do it than to have one of my favorite people. I'm sorry, DDCSP, but Quincy is one of my favorites. So yeah, so today we're just going to be talking about land conservation, tribal land acquisition, and science communication. And if you're new, can you guys hear me? If you're new, Watered Down is just a platform that I created to bring about environmental issues to you guys, because I know a lot of times in academia they use words and jargon that make people not really understand it. So I was like, water that junk down. So here we are. Quincy, if you want to join. Hold on, let's see. Or maybe do I request? Invite Quincy. Yes.
Hi Riley, can you see
Hi.
me?
Yeah, I can. Can you see me?
Yeah, it's so good to see and hear from you.
I,
Hello.
how have you been?
Okay.
I know just texted, but how have you been?
I've been good. It's been really good to be back home and just rest a little bit and really reflect about the things we've did this summer for our internship, but just overall the summer and all the amazing things that have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah. Okay. So we gotta get this show on the roll. So I want you to tell people who are you? Tell us about Quincy.
Perfect. So my name is Quincy. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a recent graduate from Gustavus Adolphus College, where I received my bachelor's in geography, my major, and political science, my minor. Additionally, I'm also a Doris Conservation Scholar at the University of Washington with you, Riley, and so many other great people who I hope get to be on this episode or in Watered Down in the future. And yeah, in terms of some of my interests, I'm really passionate about climate justice, public policies, the ways in which it fails and does good for the public, geopolitics, abolition, and the different ways in which humans interact with the land, like the what, the whys, and kind of the power dynamics between all of that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm getting excited. But me and Quincy, he told you guys that we're a Doris Duke Conservation Scholar Program. And I, well, we met earlier this year. We didn't even meet we met over Zoom. We met over Zoom and we clicked instantly. But just to give you guys background, first I want to say thank you to the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, because DDCSP would not have been anything without that foundation. I want to thank DDCSP at UW. You guys are amazing. And then I also want to thank the Trust for Public Land, because without all of these organizations, me and Quincy would have never met. We would have never worked together. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, and I'm just gonna give them a little background on DDCSP and TPL, if that's okay with you.
Perfect. I was thinking the same thing. I was
Yeah,
thinking the
but
same thing.
so I got my script, y'all. So DDCSP is the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program, and they have various programs around the world at different universities. Ours just happened to be at University of Washington in Seattle. So the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars are a diverse, committed, and creative community of young professionals from around the country who aim to change the face, practice, and future of conservation. And it's a 2 summer immersion in conservation practice, but it's specifically at UW, we center equity and inclusion in nature conservation by applying critical analysis to human interactions with lands, waters, and other species, and by being responsive to the needs and values of all communities. So I hopefully like they loved, that synopsis of, and like I'll add like I'll add DDCSP so you guys can like, go to it and definitely apply. Like if you are interested in conservation, please apply because it's just amazing. I can't believe it was actually a real thing. So go apply, stalk their page. So the next organization I'm going to tell you guys about is TPL, the Trust for Public Land. It's a nonprofit organization, and I didn't know this, Quincy, but next year will be 50 years.
Hmm.
And I was like,
It's
oh,
big.
man. So it was founded in 1972 on the conviction that all people need and deserve access to nature and the outdoors, close to home, in the cities and communities where they live, as a matter of health, equity, and justice. So the way they're different from other conservation organizations is instead of setting aside wildlands for biodiversity or habitat restoration, TPL brings the benefits of parks and nature to the places, communities that need it the most. So overall, TPL creates parks and protects lands for people, ensuring healthy, livable communities for generations to come. Whew,
Awesome. Great job.
that was a lot, but I'll so you guys can go look at their page and see the amazing stuff that they're doing. But yeah, Quincy, could you tell people a little bit about the research that we did this summer?
Yeah, so this summer I had the wonderful opportunity to work with TPL alongside Riley, which was super, super fun. And one of the main things we did was we supported TPL's land initiative team in the Pacific Northwest. Particularly, we looked for areas of shared land conservation interest between the Trust for Public Lands, which we drew from their like national strategic plan, and also we looked for public information on these tribes, land conservation plans, and climate change plans to see where the intersect is. And so we looked at over 30 federally recognized tribes, did a lot of comparison and analysis. We
Mhm.
also used a little bit of GIS to kind of get a sense of the spatial analysis to see where areas align. And we are still drafting up the report, which is going really well. It's going to be shared with the internal team, and then they're going to use it to hopefully build partnerships with tribes in the future and kind of just get a sense of what the relationship can look like. Additionally, we also got the really cool opportunity to work individually on individual projects. And I'm going to keep these a little bit vague because I don't know what I should share or shouldn't share. But I
Yeah,
can promise that it's a lot of really great and fun work. And so in our individual programs and projects, we worked with our designated mentors to help the program and the organization convey a message of why
yeah,
TPL is important, why this program is important, whether that's parks, co-acquiring ancestral and ceded lands, or policies. And so through
yeah,
this, I think we were both really challenged to bring big ideas into smaller
yeah,
ideas and communicate it in a way that's understandable and digestible for people outside of this field. But feel free
yeah,
to chime in, Riley. I kind of threw a
yeah.
lot in there.
Um, like I honestly don't know what we can say or cannot say either. I do know that me and Quincy, like we started off the first 4 weeks, like doing the research on the tribes, like if they have, any climate change plans or like land acquisition plans. And we'll talk more about that in the talk today. But, you know, what's that was the first 4 weeks, but after the 4 weeks, like we split up. And I think that was like a good part because like we got to work together in
Mm-hmm.
the half, and then we got to actually like discover what we like individually about this
Mm-hmm.
conservation work. So, what was like your favorite part in the whole thing?
Yeah, I thought it was just really fun to get to do this work on a like regional scale and also on a very small scale. But I think working on like the individual programming I did with our mentors was something I really enjoyed because it really pushed me to unlearn and relearn the ways I write and how do I communicate something that can be very jargony or confusing in a way that's digestible. And I think
Yeah,
that's something that I'm constantly working to unlearn, especially because I just graduated on how I can be a better communicator with these sometimes very complex and interconnected terms. And obviously,
yeah,
we also got the opportunity to talk to so many professionals or like conservation practitioners. And so I think like talking to people and learning about their perspectives and how they all practice conservation differently
mhm.
was very just enlightening and encouraging.
Yeah. They were. I'm like now that I look back on it, I'm so glad that they gave us those different meetings because at first I was like, like wow, like these are a lot of meetings, but like on wow, there are so many different backgrounds when it comes to concept.
Mm,
Like Kristen had like a architectural like background. I'm like,
mhm,
how does that even, but it helps her on the scope of like someone who doesn't have that aspect. Like,
mhm,
so I think just the complexity of conservation was definitely like unveiled when we started like talking to these people.
mhm.
Like, why, like marketing? I knew people have marketing, but like, why is that important? But like people that do that, it's like, it's just not about like, okay, we need to conserve this land and,
Mhm. And like
yeah,
especially because like every conversation was so insightful and intriguing because so many people brought in so many different perspectives and
yeah,
things about conservation as a professional field that like, I didn't even consider. Like like even marketing, right? Like I underestimated how difficult communicating land conservation can be
yeah,
until we were creating our deliverables. We're like, how do we communicate this? How do we balance leaving something out? And like is that like does that sit with our ethics and our morals?
yeah,
So it's
yes.
definitely a lot, but in the right way, like definitely what I needed in this point, at the point I am in my life right now.
Yeah. And I think I love that like science communication aspect you're talking about because it's like I feel like even people on here they're probably like, what is like land conservation, Riley? Like we don't even know. You know what I mean? And it's hard to like convey that, that
Hmm.
work to people because it's like people don't know that. They're not talking about that in the news. They're not talking
Hmm.
about it on Instagram. And if they are, it's because you actively follow those pages. So
Hmm.
that's a good aspect. I wanted to tell people what land conservation was, so they
Yeah.
like a synopsis, like okay, this is the kind of work that they're working on or researching on. So, land conservation. If you guys think about the word conservation, it's to protect, um, protect something from being damaged or destroyed. So now put land in front of it. So protect land from being damaged or destroyed, or the way Google says it, safeguard land in its natural state. In some cases, this could mean converting developed properties back into green spaces. So I didn't know that green spaces meant so much. I'm from Florida. Quincy, you're from. I mean, if you don't have to tell people, but
St. Paul, Minnesota.
I didn't know. I know Florida's like green and stuff, but like the cities that I live in, is very much urban. So I didn't know the importance of green spaces until I got to Seattle. And I was just like, wow, like
Mm.
there are a lot of trees. Or, just like it looks so green. And,
Mm.
I've realized that green spaces or just nature in general has a major impact on someone's emotional, physical, mental health. And
Mm.
so, like, when you don't have these spaces around you, especially with, urbanization. They're making more buildings. Like they're cutting down trees for this. Like they're cutting down trees for the apartment complex that they're making down the street. You know what I mean? So that's one less area of green space that you have to look at to soak
Mhm.
in the green to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like just like to build upon that too, like how do we turn current spaces, especially like urban spaces, into green spaces? How do we
Yeah.
find a balance between the two? Because I remember one thing that we talked a lot about with our mentors is like, why does a park matter? Why does a
Yeah.
playground matter? Right? Why does community kind of engagement matter in this work when a different audience might see it as a duality, right? Like green
Yeah.
space is forest, nature, urban is the other. But like,
Yeah.
at TPL, they really want to push towards a trajectory that informs both. But like because of that duality, it's so hard to convey that message. And how do you do that in a simple like post-it note or an email, right? So that's where it can get really difficult.
Yeah, Dami said New York is making these really cool things called skywalks, which is where they tear down the old building and put parks and green areas there. Yeah, like I think TPL has a whole bunch of projects that they're doing
Mm,
in New York. So thank you, Dami. That's really cool. No, but like even in New York is so urban. Like they one thing I do hear them say is like there is no green. Like literally it's Central Park and that's it.
mm,
So just the effort of like creating these green spaces, I think not only helps with humans and like our interaction with nature, but also probably cools down the environment around them.
mm,
So another part of our research was tribal land acquisition. That was a heavy topic that me and Quincy researched. And um, just to give like a basic, because it's definitely an in-depth topic, um, a lot of native people and I don't even say the US because they were here before the US was even made. Um, but the Aboriginal people of the continental United States um, were forced into treaties. And, these treaties had basically took their land from them. And, I get sad about it when I talk about it. But they had their land taken from them. And, they don't have rights. They ceded their land to get rights to either fishing or water rights. So a lot of the land that we live on belongs to somebody already. It doesn't belong to us. So this thing called tribal land acquisition is just a sense of reclaiming their ancestral land. If not for the like for them, like purposely of like I need this for my culture, I need this for my identity. If not that, then it's for probably climate change of like we're literally a lot of the tribes we researched were on the coast of you know the west coast, so it's kind of like as climate change and sea levels rise, those coasts are going to be gone, so where do they go? So a question I have for you, Quincy, is why is land conservation or tribal land acquisition important in a time like this?
And just to clarify, when you mean land or tribal
Hmm.
land acquisition, do you also kind of mean like land back, the importance of giving land back to um native
Yeah,
tribes?
part of it because yeah, a lot of the tribes we researched, it was like like literally
Hmm.
this and that was ours, and now we have repossession of it. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. And I think you already touched on a lot of the things I wanted to talk about, about like
yeah,
the importance of just giving the land back and just like its significance, its culture, the land's cultural significance to a lot of these native tribes. And so I think in context to land conservation, I think land conservation as like a discourse. I know that's a really broad like just a very broad topic, but just the field should be more open to
yeah,
talking about land back and what does that mean, right? I know one of the really big arguments to why a lot of like conservationists support land back is because it returns a lot of ecological knowledge back to um, the land from like indigenous groups. And just for context, like TEK, traditional ecological knowledge, or indigenous ecological knowledge, is the It's the evolving knowledge acquired by indigenous and local peoples over hundreds or thousands of years through direct contact with the environment. So when this land goes back to a lot of these native tribes, they're bringing back a lot of that knowledge into a piece of land, and
Yeah.
which is can often be missed in like quote unquote science or academia, right? And
Yeah.
like not just accidentally missed, right? A lot of these institutions purposely make it so that this form of knowledge isn't shared or regained, right? And
Be
that just
available.
speaks to like power. Yeah, it just talks a lot about power. And so that's one reason why it's so important to give like land back. But I think at its core, it's so important to look at land back and giving land or like land acquisition or giving tribes the power to practice land acquisition and like where they want their land back is
Yeah.
because there's a very cultural significance to it and intimate relation to it. And like as a settler, right, I can't speak about that significance, right? That's something outside my realm of expertise and
Yeah.
experience. But I think at its essence, the movement should really look at cultural and ecological vitality and its relationship with these tribes. And I think it's just like like for me, it's just like the right thing to do, right? Like you've taken so much of this land from violence, like due to violence and like for colonialism purposes. And so I don't think there should be even an argument on why it should be given back, right? It's just something that should be,
Or even
um,
just the sense of commemorating. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
you know, we're having like taken down because we understand now the history of it. You know, like
Hmm.
I mean, you can down land, but just acknowledging like this was their
Hmm.
land, either through cultural symbolism of like art or and
Hmm.
that's not even enough, but just
Hmm.
to honor the people that were here before us. Because right now it's almost like cultural erasure of like
Hmm.
people don't even know the native people that lived on their land.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
and I will
Yeah.
share. Oh, look at that too. I just thought of it. But the map where you can find the native lands that you live on, everybody watching, so you can know. After this show, you're gonna know. Yeah. So Quincy, we have two more questions. We're almost done, Quincy.
No worries.
But what does land conservation look like in the face of climate change?
Yeah, and I guess I should have started this earlier, but I know like my personal definition of land conservation and like my growing definition of it is transforming our relationship with the land towards sustainability, reciprocity, and respect, and like stepping away from these harmful practices that we've seen on a global scale, particularly that's been influenced by capitalism and exploitation, right? And like putting value to land. And so when I think of that definition, which is at its core really just about human relationship to the land, our relationship to the land, and how we want it to be with climate change,
Yeah.
I often ask myself, like, what is the relationship? What is my relationship with the planet right now? What is our relationship with the planet? Right? Because I feel like when we think about climate change, I know, like, for me, I can oftentimes jump to global warming. What's the science behind that? Greenhouse gases. What's the
Yeah. Yeah.
science behind that? Renewable energy. What's the science behind that? And that I kind of get lost and like I think like what the essence of what really land conservation and climate change is, which is our
Yeah.
relationship to the land, our relationship with each other, both humans and non-humans, and what we want that to be. And so like advocating towards that is
But
really difficult, right? Because like we live in
nobody
like
talks
capital,
about because like
right?
I feel like, and that's partly due to media, like that science,
Mm-hmm.
like they're like, climate change is happening, recycle gases,
Mm-hmm.
wildfires, and like that's all people know. So I'm glad
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Because we hear these things like oh my God, the world is ending. Like, we need to save the climate. But really, like, is that the thing? Or do we just need to, like, do we need to really save our relationship with the planet, transform our relationship with the planet and the land towards a way that's more, at least for me, like, more sustainable,
Yeah.
built on reciprocity, right? Built on cultural and ecological significance. Because, like under capitalism, right, which is oftentimes a word that a lot of environmentalists and conservationists like step away from, like they they value land as something profitable, and you put an economic
It's
value to it.
yeah.
And like like even during our internship, we were working when we did like GIS, we were
Mhm.
looking at parcels and
Yeah.
zoning, right? And then like
For all,
I
yeah.
yeah, and I'll be so focused on that I forget that like capitalism and like settler colonialism is what created these parcels in the first place, right? And so like it's so easy, like it was so easy for me to lose sight of that. And that like because these parcels and like these lines divide up the land in
It's not
unrealistic ways,
divided.
like that's why we have a climate crisis, right? And then that ties back to our relationship with our land. Like we see these ecological landscapes being able to divide and to conquer.
Yeah.
And so like that's a real question, I feel like, with that. So that was really
Yeah.
bolded. I just threw a lot at you in the audience.
No, it's like that because a lot of times people don't think about the relationship they have with the land. Like I do this thing. I know that people are gonna think it's weird, but like earthing, you know what I like? You walk. We walk when we were at Pack Forest. Like a lot of times we were walking in the grass without our shoes, like literally connecting with the ground. And I think people think it's like on some. I'm not trying to be like this, but people think it's on some hippie like, but it's not. It really isn't.
Mm,
It's like, connecting with the earth around you and like not even giving honor, but like just
mm,
being one with your surroundings. You know what I mean? Because a lot
mm.
of
And like,
we've built these places, these, cities, high towers, and it's like it's almost like blinded us from like what was actually in front of us. You know what I mean?
hmm or even like,
So
what is our relationship with the world from just
yeah,
what's in front of us, right?
yeah,
Like when looking at food, like do we, like before you eat, do you think about where your food comes from? When you get your water, do you think about where it comes from? And I'm guilty of this as well, because sometimes I just be moving and moving on my day, like not really being grounded and being like, oh yeah, like because of this, I have this.
yeah,
And then like that
grateful.
ties back to my relationship with our land. Yeah, like gratitude. And yeah, I definitely think when we think of the climate crisis and climate change, it's really about ourselves and our
Yeah,
relationship. And like
but
obviously always really bloated, right? Because everyone has a different relationship, but like
yeah,
just I think as a general, I think it could be really applicable.
or even like we were talking. I forgot, I'm sorry, y'all. This time, but like we were talking about I forgot where I was. I think it was on the bus or I don't know where I was, but I was in the car with somebody. But like they were saying how our relationship with the earth is definitely like monetary. So like all we can think
Hmm.
about is how can we get money from this? How can we get money from this? And something
Hmm.
that I thought, and I don't like always like to be negative. So I want to give you guys like a positive, but like, there are certain states that are actually actively trying to like make people pay like for hurting the environment. Like in Washington when we were like Target literally made you pay for bags that you use. Like I had never seen that before from Florida. Like it's either paper or plastic. You know what I mean? So there, it was almost like, wow, like this is crazy because now I'm being taxed for what I do to the earth instead of the other way around. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah,
So I'm done.
definitely.
Okay, so last question, Quincy. We made it. We made it. Okay, so how do you think conservation work can become more popular amongst people who don't study or know too much about it?
Yeah, I think like my immediate response to that question is that we have to look at ourselves, especially as like people involved in conservation and the environmental field, right? I think the definition of who and what a conservationist can be or should be needs to change,
Mm.
right? I feel like because like the whole field of the practice at itself is so vast that like to say that you're limited to the degree you study or your fellowship or like your professional status like shouldn't
Yeah.
get in the way. Like even like the work we did this summer at TPL, we talked to so many professionals from different backgrounds, from HR, from foreign affairs,
So,
from
like,
marketing, from
yeah.
all of that. Like yeah, so like it's just it's so much, anyone could be it, right? And like at the end of the day, like global warming is a global issue that requires a global response. And so we need people to like we need a collective effort. So like when you
Yeah.
try to gatekeep what a conservationist or an environmentalist can or
Yes.
can or cannot be, then like you leave people out, right? I think
Or with
that's where like yeah, or like I think this is where like fixed and concrete definitions can be really helpful, no, really harmful
yeah.
because they keep people out of wanting to get involved and just like yeah, it could just be really toxic. So in short,
Yeah.
like we just need to change or redefine and be more open to what conservation can be. And especially with the ecological and the climate crisis, we need creative solutions, which requires so many people from creative
Yeah.
backgrounds.
Different backgrounds. Exactly. And that's why this is probably like the best sweet note, but like that's why I am with the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars
Mhm.
Program. It really shows you like it really is changing the face of conservation. Like literally, like
Mhm.
because we don't all look like conservationists. If we're being honest, like if you looked at everyone in our
Mhm.
cohort, like none of us, if we were walking down the street, you would not think, oh yeah, they're crazy about the environment. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I definitely agree with you.
Or like
Do you have
for example, like even like one time someone asked me like, "Oh, is that like a diversity fellowship? Because there's so many like people of color in there." I'm like, "No, like we care about conservation, we care about the earth, right? We all come from different backgrounds. I think
yeah.
just like people's assumptions of what it means to be a conservationist,
Hmm.
it can be really harmful because it leaves people like us out, right?
Yeah.
And especially because we bring so much different perspective and like personality into these spaces. And like I know we've had conversations about this as well, about how difficult it can be to be in the space
Mm.
that's so white, right? Especially at our academic
Yeah.
institutions. A place like the DCSP is where we can really grieve and really heal. And yeah, it's
Just feel
wild, man.
comfortable.
Sorry, one more time?
I said just feel comfortable, like doing the work.
Right.
You do. Yeah.
We're just not always being questioned with our like intellectual capacities, what we know, our resume, our degrees, like
Yeah.
because like you do it's the work like in practice is so much more different than what I've learned in my at my academic institution, right? From policy to conservation to ecology, it's like we're given like these formulas, like try this, do this how things work, but in practice, I think what really was shown through this internship is that it's so much more than that, right? And every situation is different
Yeah.
and it's very difficult, really complex, and requires so many people to do it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
do you have any like last like things you want to say? Oh, people are y'all always join at the last minute. It's gonna be posted on my Instagram, so you guys can watch it like in your free time. But yeah, Quincy, do you have anything like last things you want to say?
No, not at all. But like, just thank you for having me on your channel. I made it to the Riley K's Instagram, so it's been so good. And just to hear from you, it's been so good. Like, yeah, thank you for considering me and like bringing me on here too.
Of course, like we literally worked 8 weeks together. Like like literally going through it, I was thinking, I'm like, okay, who am I gonna talk to? Like, cause I gotta talk to somebody. And then like at the end, like, I'm like Quincy, but I didn't want to ask you when we were at Pack Forest. I was like, just wait a couple of days.
Well, I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but thank you so much. I don't know. I think depending on when like we send our TPO people, our video, I'll let you guys know if it'll be put on their website or not. So you guys can go check that out. I will add everything I said, the website, all that stuff in the
Mhm.
description box so you guys can go check it out. Thank you guys for joining for another episode of Watered Down, and I'll see you guys later.
Bye. Thank you for having me, Riley. Thank you for
Bye.
coming, everyone.
Bye.